Hi guys, my name is Juan, and today I'm going to be giving you my perspective on some of the logical problems with the Trinity. So first, let's take a look at the definition of the Trinity. The Trinity is defined as three distinct persons sharing one same essence. This is the normal definition of it. The problem with this is when you look at the philosophical definition of essence, the essence of something is the property or set of properties or attributes that make an entity the entity it is. So if essence is what makes something what it is, then it follows that two things that have the same essence are identical because they will be the same thing. But Trinitarians say that the Father is not identical to the Son. So this doesn't really make sense. Another problem is that you cannot have three persons sharing one common mind and one common consciousness. It just doesn't make sense. If you think about the concept of the self, this is simply not possible. At best, you can have three minds that can communicate with each other, but this is not the same as having the same will and having the same consciousness. It's simply absurd. So let's take a look at some of the things that Inspiring Philosophy says. First, he says that four-dimensional space is mathematically coherent and therefore could actually exist.
Four-dimensional space is mathematically coherent and could exist somewhere.
However, just because something is mathematically coherent, it doesn't mean that it can exist in reality. Here is William Lane Craig making this point when it comes to an actual infinite series.
Mathematicians talk about sets that have an actually infinite number of members in them. And it is absolutely crucial to distinguish these because one is not denying that the potential infinite can exist. The denial is that there can be an actual infinite in the real world.
So in the same way, even though a fourth dimension could potentially exist, this doesn't mean that it could actually exist in the real world. Another key issue is the use of analogies in order to explain the Trinity. Michael likes to use the analogy of the Marvel character Moonknight in order to explain it. So let's take a look.
Moonknight is three distinct persons who exist together simultaneously. Mark is not Stephen, Stephen is not Jake, and Jake is not Mark. Yet they all exist together in the mind of Moonknight and can talk with one another. Yet even though the three are distinct, they are all equally Moonknight, and they are three persons of one mind.
The problem with this is that no, they are not of one mind. What they share, if anything, is one brain. More accurately, we can say that Mark has a spirit living on his brain, and the spirit can take over the body sometimes. But that's it. They don't share a common mind at all. Their minds are completely separate from each other. So this is not a good analogy.
Look at the movie Inception. The main character, Cobb's wife, passed away, but he generated a person of her who exists in his mind. Maul is distinct from Cobb, yet she has full access to his mind and thoughts. So you have one mind who is two persons.
The problem with this is that Mal obviously isn't real. It's obvious from the movie that Mal is like imaginary. It says here she's a manifestation of Cobb's guilt about the real cause of Mal's suicide. So that's like imaginary in a way. Here it also says Cobb knows Mal isn't real. So yeah, it's obvious that this analogy is like super bad.
So another analogy that people commonly make is the analogy of water and how water can have three states.
Yes, if you say God is like water, that would be the heresy of modalism.
So actually, the analogy of water also commits the fallacy of partialism. See, when you look at a body of water, what you're actually looking at is many molecules of water that are together. So it looks like one thing for the eye, but it's because we cannot see the individual parts. But depending on how these parts are arranged, it looks like it's one state or the other. So if these parts are arranged in a crystalline structure, it will look like ice. And if these parts are separated from each other, it will look like vapor. So it just depends on how the parts are arranged. So when people say the analogy of water commits the heresy of modalism, it also commits the heresy of partialism, because it all depends on how these water molecules are arranged relative to each other.
But to refer to William Lane Craig, if you're only using this as a springboard to show how something can be 3 in 1, that's not heresy.
Yeah, sure, okay, I get it. So how about we take a look at what William Lane Craig actually said?
Craig says, I do not take Cerberus to be an analogy of the Trinity. On the contrary, after appealing to it as a thought experiment, I lay it aside as inadequate. So, it's an inadequate analogy. It's not just an imperfect analogy, as Michael says. It's a bad analogy, and Craig admits this. So what else does Craig says? He says this. So what role does this play? Simply as a springboard for reflection on the Trinity. Yeah, okay, but here's the problem. If you have an inadequate analogy, then you have an inadequate springboard. That's like obvious, so you still have a problem here because you haven't explained what the Trinity is.
So you say, okay, that was just meant to be a springboard. And I'm like, okay, if that was just meant to be a springboard, then what is the actual explanation? Because you still haven't provided one,
These analogies are meant to show that something can at least be 3 in 1, which should then open up a conversation about the Trinity.
If the point is just to show in a very general way that something can be 3 in 1, then you might as well show something like this. Like, hey, this is 3 in 1, this is my analogy, right? But obviously this doesn't work, okay? You have to do better than that.
So being beyond human comprehension does not mean something does not make sense. As I said earlier, 4-dimensional space is beyond human comprehension, but it mathematically is coherent.
But the argument being made here is not that the Trinity is beyond human comprehension. Rather, is that the Trinity violates and directly conflicts with human comprehension because it entails logical contradictions. So it's a different thing.
We learn in philosophy of mind that mental things do not have the same aspects or parameters as do physical things.
Mental things may not have the same aspects as physical things, but they still have to follow the laws of logic. That's because these laws are universal and they apply to both mental things and as well as physical things. So this answer doesn't solve the problem.
We could say things like, I'm hard on myself. How could I be hard on myself? I am one agent, but I'm speaking about myself as if I'm two.
Okay, first of all, this is just an expression. And what does it mean to be hard on yourself? Well, it means basically it involves me, one agent or one person, criticizing maybe the previous actions or the shortcomings of me, the same agent of person or the same person. So I don't see how this involves like two agents at all. I don't get the point here. He's like reading too much into a language expression, I think. So if I criticize the actions of myself, I understand that this is the real me. This is not some other me. This is not a second me. So how is this like seeing yourself as two? It doesn't make sense. So in conclusion, I don't think Inspiring Philosophy made a good case for why the Trinity is logical. If you like this topic and you want me to do more on this, then please leave a comment so I will know. Also, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. See you next time. Bye.